Thomas Allen is one of the world's finest lyric baritones. A beautiful voice and a real ability to act have made him a dream Don Giovanni, Count Almaviva and Billy Budd. He's now also a director, and Tom was knighted in 1999. You come from mining country, don't you?
Yes, I mean, they didn't exactly shout down the shaft and get me to come up.
No,
but surrounded very heavily by mines. Yes, in fact, we were hemmed in right on the seashore, and the mines stretched out under the sea as well. So yes, it's very much in my blood.
And when did music first when did you think to yourself, actually, this is what I want to do with my life?
Oh, I didn't actually become aware of that aspect or that possibility until relatively late on. I mean, I was probably already a student at the Royal College of Music, wondering, what the next day was going to lead to. I really didn't know. It was all a voyage of discovery for about, I would say, the first 2.5 years when I was there, and then it began to make a certain amount of sense, and I got an ARCM, and then I got an extra year.
So what did you start off studying then?
I started off studying singing with that intention, but I just didn't know the extent to which one could have a career. I was discovering opera. I'd seen 2 or 3 operas by then in the Northeast, and I was finding out about it a little bit. I was more interested in oratorio and songs. I was always, right from the start, I was always able to stand up and sing a song when I was a little boy within the family. Like a lot of entertainers, I think otherwise I was quite shy and receding. But music was there, and church choirs were there. My father played the piano a lot at home, and I listened to him imitating Charlie Kuntz and heard popular songs and some oratorios, mostly Steiner and Maunder, but occasionally Haydn and Handel. And so it went on from there. But opera came, at a later stage, really.
Your first music is actually orchestral, but only because it's an overture.
It's Humperdinck. I love this piece. We're talking about Hansel and Gretel. I've been familiar with some of the music of Hansel and Gretel since I was in the junior school. We used to sing, with your foot you tap, 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 with your hands you clap. And I remember that very distinctly without knowing what I was singing about or who they were. But the orchestration of this overture and of the piece in general by Humperdinck, it makes me smile. It makes such a warm glow within inside you. There's a wonderful contentment. The story itself is grisly in many ways, but the glory of the music is there, and I smile every time I hear it come on. It just gives me such pleasure.
I remember the first time I heard that, I thought, but this sounds quite like Wagner.
Yes. Would that he could? I shouldn't say this. It's sacrilege. But would that he could be so succinct? It's full of wonderful melody. I mean, the tunes keep on coming. There's an adult tune, then there's a tune for children. There's a sort of little military march in there that's probably tin or chocolate soldiers or wooden soldiers. It's full of wonderful invention.
And you could tell that Colin Davis was relishing it there, couldn't you?
I think so. I mean, I can imagine Colin with the stick quite low, just churning it out, which is his habit.
The Dresden Staatskapelle Orchestra were conducted by Sir Colin Davis in the overture to Humperdinck's Hansel and Gretel. Do you find that when you know you're going to be singing a certain opera with a certain cast, that finding out who the conductor is a pretty important moment?
That's a very interesting question. Usually when I find out that I'm going to be singing an opera in a certain place, I've no idea who the cast is. A case in point, I'm due to be in Cincinnati shortly to take part in some performances of Meistersinger, and it was to be James Levine who was withdrawn, and I might find out who that is and who replaces him, but it could be quite a surprise when I get there. And it often is the case, especially in places like Vienna, where there's a kind of factory belt of performances going on, and night by night there are different people.
Well, the other thing that I'm sure that people listening to the programme may not realise is how often people walk onto the stage of these major houses, especially if they're filling in for someone, not having rehearsed really hardly at all.
Oh no, that's very common. Yeah. Very common. I mean, I've spoken to people who, tell me that they're thrilled to be going to Vienna and to the Staatskapelle, and I say, "Oh right, what are you going to see?" And they'll tell you, and they think, "Well, I know for a fact that the cast will be getting about 3/4 of an hour rehearsal for that." There are some very interesting mathematical equations to be made here, or problems to be sorted here. I remember one of the things I did in Vienna. I sang a lot in Vienna at one time, on one occasion, Traviata, and I had the rehearsal was set aside with Edita Gruberova, who was to sing the Violetta the following night, incidentally, so it's only the day before. So we had 25 minutes to do our scene, and our scene only. When it came to the evening, it was left to your own devices and logic as to there's a door, you go through it, you say the appropriate things to the appropriate people, and you leave at the appropriate time. I had no idea what was going on. But the worst one was when I was in the middle of the second act of Bohème. It was a second performance, and, Marcello in the second act proposes the toast, and l'allegri un toast, quad el liquor, and everyone joins in. And that's the cue for Marcello's lover, Musetta, to laugh off stage before she makes her frivolous entry. And so the lady in question laughed off stage, and I thought to myself, I've no idea who that is, because I don't recognise the voice. Not at all. And a girl walked on stage I'd never seen before in my life, and we just made it up as we went along. And for that, you pay lots of money. But the strange thing is, it often works. That's the exciting thing.
Yeah. Yes. The interesting thing is that with this programme, as you know, we don't usually have professional musicians, so it's rather nice that we're having a group at the moment, because what people normally do is to reveal a love of music, which they're not known for because they're either a painter or something. But in this interest, what we'll find out, things that you love which you don't necessarily sing, and the next piece, of course, is a very good example.
It is. I've chosen some Schubert, some piano music. If I come home from work, I don't immediately put music on anyhow. And if I do, it's more likely to be something other than the human voice. My wife knows, Jeannie knows, that when I come in at night, she often is listening to Radio 3, which you'll be pleased to hear, or recordings. And if I walk through the door, she tends then to turn to Radio 4 and the Archers or whatever, rather than inflict yet another voice on me. I just need to get away from it. I'm sure I'm not unusual in that. But if I want to listen to some music, then I love listening to piano music. There are one or two colleagues of mine with whom I've dared to play the piano on occasions, and they're quite amused at that, more than quite amused. It makes them hysterical, really, playing piano duets. But I enjoy it. I love it. I can't deny that. And I only wish I could achieve some kind of expertise at it. It's too long now. I've been playing badly too long to do that. But I've chosen this Fantasia because I don't want to hear a Schubert song, but the melody in this and the bareness at times in it, I think, is rather wonderful. I think with four hands, and this is Brendel and Evelyne Crochet playing the Fantasia, the Opus 103 F minor, because there are four hands, you can sort of analyse it as it goes along, and it's easy somehow to differentiate what is going on and then put it all together. And there's a clarity within it and a energy within it and a beauty and invention that gives me huge satisfaction. I don't know how many programs you've done, but it must have cropped up on many occasions.
Come occasionally, yes.
Yeah. And there's good reason, because it's such a beautiful piece. I mean, the shape of it is beautiful. But from my point of view, this applies to the Hansel and Gretel as well. I think it makes me feel as if I really do live on an island. And this is a contact with a completely different part of Europe where music like this was invented and where it developed and where it's really at home. And when I'm in Munich, which I am a lot, or in Vienna or around Vienna in Austria, and driving around and looking at a linden tree that inspired Schubert or whatever it might be, it just is an insight into something else that was going on there. And it is an insight, I think, into that, and it's a privilege. That's part of the privilege, I think, of having the colleagues there and being a part of this music making that sits slightly unnaturally with us still, I think, here at times.
Alfred Brendel and Evelyne Crochet were playing part of the Fantasia in F minor, Deutsch 940, by Schubert. Tom Allen, we've talked a little bit about casts and conductors, and I suppose the next thing is directors. I mean, You've actually appeared under the hand, as it were, of some completely contrasting characters, haven't you? I mean, Woody Allen.
Contrasting characters by way of directors, yes, from Woody Allen all the way to Giorgio Strehler and beyond. Yeah, they come in all shapes and sizes.
I mean, do they make the same kind of difference that a conductor makes, or do they make an even bigger difference, do you think?
There is no set rule for that, and I don't know what the set rule is either for a conductor. In the case of directors, I'm learning this myself, that so much of the job is in their own choice of designer. The designer will come up with ideas, and I mean, it's a discussion, obviously, but the designer is the person, the artist who can actually put the bricks and mortar together of a set on the stage.
Because period is one of the first decisions, isn't it? Where are we going to set this opera?
Yes, indeed. Well, like yesterday, I made a decision 1790 for Figaro, for example, so we know where we are with that. That's looming large for me at the moment. And it can be very telling, and that's down to your designer. And so many of the answers as to what a director does are provided by the designer. But there are those other directors who, I mean, you go from the full concept, Gesamtwerk and everything else, durchkomponiert, all of those big German compound words apply, who've thought the entire thing through from the first clarinet entry in the orchestra right the way to the final chord and everything else that goes on in between. And that's quite stifling, I find. And then there are the others the rare ones, really. Well, no, not so rare, I suppose. I think it's as well to understand that we do have usually a very good relationship, and there's a give and take, and it's an exchange of ideas, largely, in the best of circumstances, I always feel. And I think the best of directors are looking at the individual that's up there on the stage, hoping to interpret their idea and their vision of what they've had for the last 2-3 years in preparing this piece, looking at the individual and then being able to tailor it. Peter Hall was always very good at that, it seems to me, that he wouldn't come with preset ideas, although there would be largely formed ones and mature ones, but with scope to mould an individual into what his idea might be of a piece. And that was the case with Giovanni at Glyndebourne, I think, when I went into it. And then others that simply don't really know. And will say, I like the picture made over there a moment ago. Do you think you could remember what that was? And I think, when you go over there, could you maybe... All right, okay. Could we repeat that? And so it goes...
No prizes for guessing who that was.
It goes right to great extremes. And then Strehler, who was a genius stroke monster. I loved Giorgio Strehler. It was hugely physical. We had fights. I mean, it was only a matter of time before we punched one another, I think. But we got a result in the end. I wish I'd known him when he was a younger man and hugely vital. He was still vital when I worked with him, but I think there were probably greater years before that, and he was a